We have some action items this morning. The first being the 2021-2022 Unified Planning Work Program. I'd ask for a motion and a second on this, please.
So moved.
Who was that?
Kevin Bush. Kevin Bush.
Thank you, Kevin.
Seconded, Santos.
Okay, with a motion and a second, I'd ask Jim, would you please provide an overview for us?
Yes, so resolution 21-1 was reviewed and recommended for your approval by the Planning Committee on February 11th. The Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, is the program of federally funded transportation planning activities that is undertaken by GTC staff, its member agencies, and other jurisdictions throughout the region. For the fiscal 2021-22 UPWP, we will be supporting planning activities for the period from April 1 of this year to March 31 of next year. And projects that are in the current UPWP that are not complete as of March 31 will roll into the next one. Just a little bit of background, we received 21 applications for projects requesting about $1.7 million to support planning studies. We were able to make about $1 million available. So the Unified Planning Work Program Development Committee, or UDC, met in November and December. The efforts of the UDC resulted in a project list for public review and the full draft of the UPWP document. The Planning Committee approved the public review document and draft full document. So I'm sorry, the first item was a list of new projects, and then the other would be the full document. That was put out for a 30-day public review from January 11th through February 9th. We did receive a few comments. They were shared with the Planning Committee on February 11th. None of the comments were significant enough to alter the list of projects to be recommended for funding. Some have identified potential future projects. So, but all of the comments that we received were provided in the transmittal memo to you in the meeting package. And I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
I'll ask if there's no further discussion on this action item, I'd ask if anyone is opposed to moving this action item forward. Hearing no one opposed, I'll declare this action carried. Next, we have some UPWP closeouts. We could consider these under a single action. If any board member or alternate would like to have a separate vote on any individual resolution or combination of resolutions, we could have those items removed and act separately. Is anyone in disagreement with moving all these closeouts together as one action? Hearing no objection to that, I'd ask for a motion and a second, please.
So moved. Jim Pond, Monroe County.
Second, Jim McIntosh.
Thank you. I'd ask Jim, would you please provide an overview?
Sure. So all of these resolutions were reviewed and recommended for your approval by the Planning Committee on February 11th. The first project in the list, the NISDOT Safety Investigations and Analysis, is a project that was conducted by NISDOT Region 4. The executive summary starts on page 40 of the meeting package. The purpose of the project was to assist the NISDOT Region 4 traffic unit with highway safety investigations. These are standardized engineering procedures for evaluating and recommending countermeasure improvements to correct any identified safety deficiencies. The consultant team analyzed the Route 15 or West Henrietta Road corridor from I-390 south to Route 252 or Jefferson Road. And the analysis focused on crashes over a 3-year period. There were 3 key areas of recommendations, including enhancing the safety for vulnerable users, for intersection improvements, and various corridor countermeasures. And actually, NISDOT Region 4 is using this study already to support a broader scoping effort that would look at a more significant capital project for this corridor that would fix the infrastructure and deal with safety issues at the same time. So it's being put to use right away. Next, we have the Vulnerable User Safety Assessment Program. This project was conducted by GTC staff, and the executive summary starts on page 48 of the meeting package. The purpose of this project was to conduct an analysis of crashes involving vulnerable users, which is bicyclists, pedestrians, motorcyclists, horse and buggy users. As I describe it, basically anybody not surrounded by a steel cage. And this was done for 10 locations using a roadway safety assessments methodology. So the first step in this methodology in this project was to identify 10 corridors that had a significant number of crashes that involved either pedestrians, bicyclists, or motorcyclists, or some combination. We didn't have enough horse and buggy crashes that rose to the top 10 list, basically. These candidate locations were investigated through on-site roadway safety audits. This is a structured method of analyzing roadway safety. It involves multidisciplinary teams that literally walk the corridor, and a toolbox of standard recommendations that would provide ways to address various concerns. Through the process of developing the roadway safety audits, a series of planning program recommendations for GTC were included for future direction. So we've got some follow-on activities that are coming out of this, and 10 corridors that could potentially see some improvements. Next, we have the Village of Avon Circulation Accessibility Parking Study. The project was conducted by the Village of Avon. The executive summary starts on page 56 of the meeting package. And the purpose of this project was to develop a circulation, accessibility, and parking study for the Route 5 and 20 corridor from Pole Bridge Road to the Genesee River Bridge, with the focus of improving pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicle circulation and safety throughout the corridor. The project evaluated prior plans and studies as part of an inventory that seeks to understand the current and projected land use and transportation conditions, both from physical and operational standpoints. The plan identified key needs through analysis of the collected and obtained data. That would be data that was already available from other sources. That was supplemented with public and stakeholder feedback. And the recommendations focus on enhancing safety for all users through dedicated pedestrian and bicycle facilities that would support non-motorized connectivity, including between the residential neighborhoods and the Greenway Trail, which is significant north-south trail through the region. The study includes implementation information such as the concept level cost estimates, potential federal, state, and local funding opportunities, and various follow-on activities. Lastly, we have the Honeyway Hamlet Active Transportation Study. This project was conducted by the Ontario County Planning Department along with the town of Richmond. The executive summary of this project starts on page 67. The purpose of the project was to develop a comprehensive transportation plan element, specifically for the Honeyway Hamlet, that would become part of the town's full comprehensive plan, wanting to address vehicular, parking, pedestrian, and recreational trail needs, and incorporate a complete streets approach for the hamlet itself. The plan builds upon previous efforts, but also develops new fiscal and regulatory recommendations to increase transportation options for residents and visitors, to enable improved access to destination services, places of education and employment within the hamlet. The report recommends specific facility, programmatic, and policy improvements which intend to enhance the livability of the hamlet and the Main Street activity centers therein. Seeks to preserve and enhance the hamlet's character and walkability, and also identify opportunities for improved connection connectivity and access for non-motorists to the hamlet and leverage Honeyway Lake as an asset. It's a significant destination and a residential component around the lake, but there's some separation between that and the hamlet and the business center. So looking to enhance those connectivity there. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions anybody might have.
Is there any further discussion on these closeouts? Does anyone object at this time to accepting these closeouts of the UPWP? Hearing no objections, I'll consider this action approved. Our next action item is some TIP amendments. I believe we have 7 of those. Is there any board member or alternate who objects to us not combining these 7 together in one action? Hearing no objections, I'd ask for a motion and a second on these amendments, please.
Motion Inglesby. Talavasic, second.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
I'd ask Jim to please provide an overview at this time.
Sure. So the first one on the list is the East Main Street reconstruction project in the city of Rochester. And this amendment is requested by the city. This change is requested to align the tip with the actual bids that were received, while also maintaining the 75% federal share that was originally programmed to eligible activities. It should be noted that the city has taken advantage of the road reconstruction project to make utility improvements that avoid the need to cut into a new road after that reconstruction is done. That's why when you look at the project totals, the federal amount is only about $57,000. I'm sorry, 57%. Excuse me. The next project is dealing with highway preventive maintenance projects within the city. The city of Rochester is requesting this amendment and is looking to combine these projects to realize efficiencies in the contracting and managing of the 2 projects that are out there. You'll notice some changes in the project limits. South Avenue, the limit is being extended to avoid the need to address a relatively short segment between Science Parkway and East Henrietta that would end up being part of a separate project, but if it was done separately would cause significant disruption to the traveling public at another time. It just made sense to do it together. There are several segments that are being dropped. These are relatively short segments that the city plans to address via other projects. Ultimately, the changes result in a less costly project that frees up some funds for other projects. Next, we have the I-390 projects. This amendment is requested by NISDOT, and the change is requested to realize efficiencies in contracting and maintaining 2 adjacent projects. If you look at the project names, they're basically consecutive sections of I-390 in Livingston County. The project is also being shifted from about 88% federal funds to 100% state funds, with funding provided from NISDOT main office. The changes free up funds for other projects, and but even though there's no federal funds on this, we are keeping the project on the tip for informational purposes, given its regional significance. Next, we have I-490 bridges, another amendment requested by NISDOT. When this project was first put onto the tip, it was only included with the early engineering phases. There was still a lot of unknowns about the project. And now that the project design has advanced, NISDOT has a better understanding of what is needed out there and what it will cost. So building on the previous commitment, NISDOT main office has provided additional funding from the statewide pots of National Highway Freight Program and National Highway Performance Program funding to support this project. You'll see up on the screen some splits there. And the balance of the funding is coming from regional funds that were freed up by the I-390 project I just discussed. Given their proximity, these two bridges are being worked on together. I think it's maybe a tenth of a mile. They're really close to each other, and typically, if they were separate projects, their work zones would overlap. But progressing the two projects under a single project minimizes the impact to the traveling public by having a shared work zone and a shared schedule. The next project is the Route 19 and Route 98 over Erie Canal rehabilitation. This amendment is requested by NISDOT, essentially in partnership with the Canal Corporation. This change is requested to reflect the latest cost estimate given design decisions that have been made by the Canal Corporation and to adjust the respective cost shares between NISDOT and the Canal Corp. It's pretty standard for bridges over the canal. The next amendment is adding a new project for, and this request is made by NISDOT. It would add a new project that intends to reduce the incidence of low bridge strikes and wrong-way driving on expressways. And since the meeting package was mailed or distributed, NISDOT has requested a slight modification to the resolution. So the conversations are currently underway to determine if it makes sense for NISDOT Region 4, based out of Henrietta, to administer the corresponding project for Region 6, based out of Hornell. Alex, if you can advance the slide there, we have an adjustment where we're asking to add a clause to the resolution that basically would allow future changes without having to come back to the board should there be a need to consolidate the Region 6 and Region 4 projects. If this happens, then it would not affect the accomplishment or cost within our region. But in light of this, if there's no objection, I would request that the resolution that was made, or I'm sorry, the motion and second that were just made would be adjusted such that its resolution 21-11 would be approved as revised, as you see on the screen, to add in this flexibility. And the last project is reinstating the pedestrian safety action plan. This amendment is requested by NISDOT, and this change would reinstate a previous project. Due to performance issues, NISDOT had to cancel the previously awarded contract that was funding under our previous TIP. So this action would reinstate the project onto the current TIP so that it can be a contract can be relet and the project can be implemented as intended. With that, I'll answer questions you might have.
Jim, Bill Carpenter here. The authorization you're looking for, is there a funding authorization or simply project changes that have no funding consequences?
So it would be no funding consequences to our region. Essentially, there is a project for our region that includes our proportion of the statewide project, a different project in the statewide transportation program for the Hornell region that has their proportion. This would just allow the contract and the project to be administered under one designation out of Region 4. So it's really an accounting and administrative change, the way NISDOT would manage the project. And Chris Reeve is on the line, Kevin Bush on the line. If I don't have that correct, please add that, or please let me know.
Yeah, Jim, this is Chris. You do have it correct. It's just a clause to allow GTC to be able to add the Region 6 funding to the Region 4 project if we run into a scenario where the feds insist that it's set up that way. Region 6 is putting their funds on their tip. But if we get information from main office that it has to progress as entirely on the GTC tip because the region 4 DOT is delivering for both regions, then we have the mechanism to make that change immediately as opposed to have to wait for another board meeting.
And just, however the amendment is done, if it can capture that, because the current language seems overly broad for what the intent is. But I'd leave it for those that made the motion and second, how they would want to, the amendment.
Alex, can you go back one slide so people have that in front of them? I can offer up where right now it reads, so that the Genesee Transportation Council authorizes the GTC Executive Director to take actions necessary to amend the 2024 TIP and any associated changes to the 2024 statewide TIP to incorporate the Region 6 project without any subsequent action by the council. Would that satisfy folks?
Yeah, that would work for me.
I just want to double check who we had. So, Mr. Inglesby, you had the motion. Would that be okay with you?
That change is okay with me.
Is there any further discussion on this? It sounds like the person who made the motion and the one that made the second are okay with this revised amendment. Hearing no further discussion, I'd ask if anyone objects to passage of this these TIP amendments. Hearing no objections, we'll consider it approved. Next, we have an action item adopting a public engagement plan. I look for a motion and a second on that, please.
Scott Levisich, move it.
Bill Carpenter, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Jim, would you please provide an overview?
Yes. So this resolution was reviewed and recommended for your approval by the Planning Committee on February 11th. So GTC is required to have a documented public participation plan that defines a process for providing individuals, affected public agencies, and other interested parties with reasonable opportunities to be involved in the metropolitan transportation planning process. That's a paraphrase of what's written into the federal legislation, or regulations rather. And the regulations require reasonable opportunities, but we prefer to ensure that we do more with an eye towards meaningful opportunities. We think it's a step above. The Public Engagement Plan, or PEP, is an action plan to involve and engage the public in the transportation planning process. It guides the public, GTC staff, our member agencies, and sponsors who administer GTC-funded projects that are through the, say, the Unified Planning Work Program or the TIP. What are the various requirements that come with those? And meaningful and effective participation is essential to successful implementation of a plan or a project or a program. So it's necessary that we ensure the needs of local community are adequately addressed. All GTC planning work products, as well as our major amendments to adopted plans and programs, are covered by this plan. So our Unified Planning Work Program, our long-range plan, our TIP, they all are defined in here. Projects that are conducted, like the planning study closeouts we just talked about, are addressed. So it runs the gamut. It is organized into sections for each type of public involvement opportunity. Each of those includes a description of what it is, why it is important, the applicable process related to publicity efforts, arrangements for accessibility and accommodations, contingency plans, how and when each of these types of involvement opportunities are reviewed, amended, or updated, and then references for more information to various tools, regulations, legislation. So we strive to provide a consistent guidance to manage expectations, but also leave room for flexibility to customize different situations. How you engage the public in a rural setting versus an urban neighborhood could be different. So we want to ensure there's some flexibility, but again, everybody has meaningful opportunities. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions.
Jim, I just
Is
want to
there
interrupt
any-
for a second and say that we are on input.com page now. I've been chatting with Amanda for the last 30 minutes and we finally got it working, so we should be all set.
Yeah, thank you, Jody. All right, I'm sorry. I was gonna say I thought I heard Mr. Lefebvre saying something.
Oh, no, very good.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion on this public engagement plan? Hearing none, is anyone opposed to adopting this plan? Hearing no objections, I'll consider this plan adopted. Next, we have action of supporting the Wyoming County requested functional classification system. I'd ask for a motion and a second, please, to bring this to the floor.
Motion by Jim Pond.
Second by Inglesby.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Jim, would you provide an overview, please?
Yes, so this resolution was reviewed and recommended for your approval by the Planning Committee on February 11th. Just by way of background, the functional classification system is a hierarchy of roads. As the name implies, roads are classified based on how they function for travel. The system is a balance between mobility, or how far you can go, and accessibility, or how much you can access. If you think about an interstate highway, you can only get on and off in limited locations, but you can go pretty far. Therefore, it has low accessibility and high mobility. On the opposite end of the spectrum would be a cul-de-sac where you can't go very far, but you can access every property. It has high accessibility and low mobility. Another factor that comes into play is whether or not the road is in an urbanized area or not. This classification determines whether a road is eligible for federal funds. So County Road 31/Exchange Street is mostly located within the Attica urbanized area. On this graphic, you'll see the village of Attica outlined, but the urbanized area does extend down to the Attica Correctional Facility and Wyoming Correctional Facility. If you think about how the census defines an urbanized area, it's all about population density, and prisons are pretty densely populated. So the urban area boundary actually ends at Meadow Lane, which if you see the arrow on the map, just a little off the tip of the arrow, you'll see Meadow Lane. And that's the southern edge of the Attica prison. This is not a public road. It only provides access to the two correctional facilities. And from Meadow Lane north, the road is classified as an urban collector, which makes it eligible for federal aid. From Meadow Lane south, the road is classified as a rural minor collector, which is not eligible for federal aid. But as you can see on the map, the distance from Exchange, the distance of Exchange Street from Meadow Lane to its terminus at Dunbar Road, just to the south, is only about 0.15 miles. And from a traffic operations or functional standpoint, Dunbar Road is the logical terminus for federal aid purposes. So Wyoming County is requesting that this classification, the classification of the short section be changed from rural minor to rural major collector, and that would make the full length of Exchange Street eligible for federal funds. It should be noted that the county is moving forward on designing a preventive maintenance project out here now, and the project limits would go all the way south to Dunbar Road. The process for making a change to the functional classification starts with this board giving concurrence. The request is then sent off to NISDOT main office for their consideration. And upon their concurrence, the request is submitted to the Federal Highway Administration's New York Division for them to either approve or deny. And with that, I will answer questions.
Is there any further discussion on this request for functional classification?
No, it totally makes sense. This Jim Pond from Monroe County, that makes good sense to do that. That little being an odd class, like we have a couple of those, and that it's good to get the continuous route going.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Is anyone opposed to this functional classification change? Hearing none, I'll say that the Genesee Transportation Council supports this reclassification. Our last action item is supporting the Transportation, Economic Development, and Environmental Conservation Bill. I look for a motion and a second to bring this to the floor, please.
Santos moves.
Do we have a second?
Bush, second.
Thank you. With a motion and a second, Jim, please provide an overview.
Sure. So the New York State fiscal year 2022 executive budget, as proposed by Governor Cuomo, includes a number of related bills under Article 7 of the state constitution, and these are related to implementing core appropriations bills. These Article 7 bills focus on amending state laws that govern programs and revenues that have an impact on the budget. On February 5th, Ron Epstein, who is the NISDOT Executive Deputy Commissioner, shared with the New York State Association of MPOs that NISDOT has proposed two particular legislative initiatives, Part A and Part B, of quite a few, that are part of the Transportation, Economic Development, and Environmental Conservation Bill. He had indicated that NISDOT would appreciate support from the various MPOs across the state. Part A is focused on deterring bridge strikes on state parkways, and the purpose of this bill would increase the fines for overheight vehicles violating restrictions and for operating a commercial vehicle illegally on a state parkway. Would also enhance commercial vehicle owner responsibility to avoid such incidents and prohibit the use of general consumer GPS devices for routing of commercial vehicles, and instead require the use of commercial grade GPS specifically designed for commercial and overheight vehicles. Part B is focused on addressing safety of transportation workers, pedestrians, and the public. The purpose of this bill would enhance the safety of transportation workers, pedestrians, bicyclists, and the traveling public by increasing fines and penalties for violations, and by clarifying responsibility and giving authority related to accident clearance. Essentially, if you're in a minor crash on the highway and there's no injuries, move off to the side of the road and then get it worked out. The Planning Committee considered this proposal and offered up 2 points of clarification on Part A, the one dealing with parkways. First, the legislation should clarify that municipal and other public fleet owners are not subject to these new provisions, but they're applicable to private commercial fleets. The second suggestion was the legislation should clarify that these new provisions are applicable to state-owned limited access parkways like the Lake Ontario State Parkway and not other public roads that have the word parkway in their name. Plenty of those around communities. And then since the meeting package was sent out, we did receive clarification that the letter should be addressed to the respective chairpersons of the State Assembly and Senate Transportation Committees. The draft letter just says TBD. So your action would authorize and direct me to submit a letter of support for these two legislative initiatives to Assemblyman William Magnarelli and Senator Tim Kennedy. The remaining delegation from our region and our partners at NISDOT would be copied. And the draft letter was included in the meeting package. And I guess I would offer it up if Kevin Bush wants to add anything.
I would just say if the board approves this recommendation, the department is very grateful, and we think both items are very positive legislation going forward.
I'll ask, is there any further discussion on this? Is anyone opposed to the GTC submitting letters of support? Hearing no one opposed, we'll assume that we will support this bill. I'll ask, is there any new business to come before the board this morning?
I do not have any.
This is Kevin Bush, State DOT. I just would like to share with the group that it's been an honor serving with this board. The collaboration in this region is outstanding. I don't see it in other places. And this will be my last board meeting. I'm retiring the end of April, and I just wanted to wish everyone the best, and thanks for your cooperation.
Congratulations, Kevin.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Kevin. Wow.
Congratulations, Kevin. Maybe I can put you on a committee in Farmington now. You had some free time.
The department has not made any formal announcements on a replacement or an acting regional director, and we got lots of time for that. So in the interim, if anybody has any questions, Chris Reeve is there to answer them, and he'll still continue to be active with the GTC as our planning and program manager. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other new business to be shared with the board this morning? Hearing none, our next meeting is scheduled tentatively for June 10th at the Henrietta Town Hall.
And then just to
At this
clarify,
time,
it's only the location that's tentative, depending on what's going on with COVID. We will be meeting June 10th.
Thanks for that clarification, Jim. Is there any other business to come before the board this morning? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion and a second for adjournment.
Move we adjourn. Santos.
Second, Jim Pond.
Thank you. Meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.